86K BTC. I can't believe I'm saying 86K BTC. It's been an absolute nightmare. Couple of hours out there. If you're sitting at altcoins, well, you're actually doing okay in the last couple of hours because these alts seem to be holding. So today, guys, we're looking at BTC. Is there more news coming? Is there more pain coming? We're going to break this chart down on the higher time frame and the lower time frame. Then on these altcoins, there's potential bounces coming shortly, but are we going to short these bounces? Are we going to get a nice rejection on these alts? So I'm covering all of those setups for you guys. We got so much to talk about. It's rough out there. We're looking for a deep V recovery. Let's get right into this. And remember, as always, hit that like, hit the bell, hit the subscribe. And I'm looking at the comments there. The guys aren't that happy at the moment there, James. Keep them coming through. Somebody said we're going straight to zero. Guys, I'm trying my best to prop up the market. I've got the deep V recovery because we know when it happens, it's going to be quick. There's going to be a little squeeze to the upside. And I've got some short setups for you guys. Okay, Mark's in the house too. He says, yes, sir, let's hack our way out of this. Guys, hackers unite. Okay, the hackers are going to get their shorts. They're going to get things today. And it's all going down. Cosmo the dog is here. How many times must we bend over? Good morning, Yumi. What's happening? Banter Bubbles now. Story, IP, top left. That thing is disgusting. Look at that, 26% up. But everything else is absolute filth. As to what I can see here, Radium still taking blows. We saw news with Radium and the market makers there. Loving that comment there, PMG George. But all around, guys, super messy at the moment. So what I wanted to actually do today is try and grab some of your tokens as well. But I've got about 4 or 5 higher time frame charts for you guys to look at some of your favorite altcoins. So we're going to look at those two. We're going to look at some big DCA zones for you guys. And Rafael, yes, correct. Bounce now, or I'm cutting it off. Literally going to cut this thing off. Okay, let's look at BTC. Let's look at this filth, and then let's see what we can do and what they are trying to do with us now. So you can see this thing has fallen off a cliff. Okay, it looks like the most beautiful waterfall we've ever seen. Now, it's difficult to call a bounce. You can see Bitcoin is currently consolidating around this 86,600 region at the moment. They are trying something here. There's been panic selling in the market. There's been many reasons why everyone's panicking out. We're going to look at some of the news in a couple of seconds here. But big level now, Bitcoin 86,600. Let's watch that. Maybe we get some kind of short-term recovery bounce. Then a couple of levels lower down. Now, I'm watching the 4-hour at the moment. I want to highlight the anchored VWAP from the September dumps. Remember that filth dump in September where they absolutely ended us? Well, here's the VWAP. It's been touched once, and here it is waiting nicely for us at around about 84,100. So that's a backup level that I've got in play here at the moment. So we've got 86,600, 85,150, and I've got 84 on the button there for you guys. Now, dare I show you this before I show you that weekly chart, because this is not something we really want to talk about just yet. I think what we want to see is some kind of bounce out of Bitcoin first before we start looking at CME gaps. But we're going to talk about that when we look at that weekly chart. But in terms of what is the game plan now, we know Bitcoin is looking bearish. We know a couple of things factually. We've lost our major range low, which was 90 to 91K. That was always a massive, massive level for us. Now we have lost that region over there. What does that tell me? That tells me if we get a pump up here and we start pushing, that is probably a rejection zone. That is probably an area where we're going to get some shorts. That is probably an area where we can start looking to sell. Then a little bit higher up, there is a CME gap here and a VWAP at this next region. So region number 1, 90 to 91, rejection zone. Region number 2, 92 to 93,800. That is rejection zone number 2. So I would look out there. If we are pumping into those zones, no euphoria zone. Those are the zones we're taking profit. Those are the zones we're looking for shorts. And we're going to tie in some of our altcoins that are pumping at the same time. We're going to look to exit those. We're going to look for some shorts in those types of areas. So that is typically what I'm looking for if there is a push to the upside. Now, as an extreme measure, you can see we do have our a descending trend in play. You can see that on the 4-hour. So this tells me if there is, for some reason, a further euphoric pump and they really start pushing it higher, I'm really struggling to see that we're going to break through this 98, 99K level. And I suspect one of these zones here, one of these areas is going to be the one that sends us down to the CME gap. It's going to be one that sends us down to potentially the low 70Ks if that is going to play out. James, do you like that? Do you like the sound of that? Low 70K.
Love it. Sounds great. Looking forward to
it. So from a strategy perspective, at the moment, you can see things are looking abysmal out there, and any pumps out of BTC, we're not getting euphoric until we start breaking through all these big levels. So areas you want to watch, 90, call it 91K. Next one, 93K, that's your next rejection zone. And then the next big one is going to be this 97 to 98K. Okay, that's the danger zone there for you guys. Those are short zones. Those are the ones that could give us a ticket much lower down. So let's jump into the news. Then we're going to talk BTC on some higher time frames. And you can see we're getting a little bit of a bounce here. If you are sitting in longs at the moment, you can use these wick lows as your support. You can use them as your cut zone. So 86K is the current bottom there for BTC. Remember these alts as well, they seem to be bottoming out on a couple of levels. We saw dominance falling over, and if you are sitting in altcoin longs, you can use the lows from what you see or what you saw from that dump earlier today. So just tee yourself up there accordingly there, and let's see how we go. Okay. This is it. Okay, this is how everybody was feeling earlier today. When things start falling over and you're looking at your trading account, this is a feeling you often get faced with. Am I on the right track here? Inverse bull here, James. You sell at a loss or you hold this thing to zero, and for some reason you hope to God that these things pump. Okay, and then remember the secret is if they do pump when things are looking filthy like this often gives you an opportunity to exit. Okay, it gives you an opportunity to take profits. It gives you an opportunity to look for some head shorts whenever there is a pump in the market. So just remember that, guys. It doesn't always have to be long in one way. And now 𝗙𝗧𝗟𝗍 really taking the piss. Yeah, he says considering a second job to acquire more Bitcoin. So he's enjoying the fact that things are falling over. Okay, and he's enjoying the fact that he may get slightly cheaper BTC now. There's obviously been a lot more than this since we last checked in, and I suspect if there's a short squeeze now, we're going to start adding to these liquidations. But at the moment, I posted this earlier. Follow me on Twitter at the Lord of Entry. Total liquidations 1.5 billion. I mean, it always feels like we're breaking records, but these guys are really putting us under pressure there. And all of a sudden, and we haven't looked at this in a while, the fear and greed index is back to 25. So we've seen in the past, fairly regularly, when we hit the low 20s, it actually is a sign that we need to start getting a little bit long there. So let's keep our eyes on this thing. If this thing starts putting more pressure into the low 20s, I'm going to really be inclined to say that at least the bottom for a specific move is it. Okay, we might not go to all-time highs, but we're getting to that point where we could get some kind of bounce there if we use that fear and greed as a gauge. Master says Celestia is up 10%. Why? I mean, yeah, fuck knows. Absolute shitcoin, and it's probably just squeezing because it's so heavily shorted. You never actually know if there's actually news floating around. Now, Lark Davis, I looked at this earlier today, and he summed this up really nicely, and I thought I just want to share this with you guys. He says, brutal market conditions. Bitcoin at the bottom of the range, hanging on by a thread, so that was obviously a little bit earlier. MACD weekly bear cross in effect. ETH broke the multi-year uptrend. Sol is down 50% in a month. Most altcoins mega wreck. We know about that. Loads of rejections across the board. The S&P 3% of all-time highs. It's a bit worse today, but fear is growing. Okay, inflation, tariffs, everything's looking filthy. Basically, everything he thought was going to play out in the markets has been wrong in 25. Round trip, so many potential profits, took losses on some newer altcoin buys, and the sell-off is one for the record books. There are still various bullish catalysts that could send the markets. But guys, this is actually insane what has gone down, and it's you haven't been alone. If you've been holding a spot bag or you've been sitting in positions and things like that, it's actually unprecedented the way these alts have fallen over with regards to what everyone was expecting in terms of the macro side of things as well. So just hang in there. And Jamarco says dominance dropping hard, and that is going to help these alts start pumping off some lows. Okay, so that is a good start. Remember, if you are jumping into trades now, especially the degens, you're using the lows from the dip. Okay, so all those lows from the dips that you can see, that is what you're going to use as your exit plan if these things start reversing to the downside. Now, Adam, I need that picture, and I've actually forgot to bring it. Maybe James is going to send it to me on WhatsApp, and I can get it out for you guys. Okay, let's go. So the the Bybit situation is sorted. Okay, they paid back their loan. Bybit is good. Okay, they're cruising again, and all is well. So that's resolved itself in a couple of days. Nice to see the community sticking together, but that hack now is a thing of the past. Now they've lost the money, but I suspect they'll make it back. So I don't think they're too fussed. Then in terms of what started dumping the market, if anybody wants to look for a reason as to why the market's dumped and things like that, there's always going to be a little bit of news linked to it somewhere or somehow. And Trump was saying last night that 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico are in fact going forward. And I don't think the crypto market enjoyed that. And I think the S&P didn't enjoy that either. The stock market has now entered extreme fear. So we've got Bitcoin extreme fear. We've got the US stock markets in extreme fear. And we've got the NVIDIA earnings coming tomorrow. So things are looking interesting from that side. But in terms of the S&P, well, we are approaching the bounce now or cut it off zone. Okay, that is what we are going to be looking at. So in terms of S&P, you can see massive sell-off here today at the moment, but 5,900, let's watch this region over here. You can see there might be a little bit of support here, 5,920. Let's see if we get some kind of bounce. Alternatively, we're probably looking at this 5,860 region for this S&P bounce. So keeping it really simple. And, it's pretty unusual that you get these types of red candles without some mega bounce shortly afterwards. And we can see here 1, 2, 3, 4 daily reds in a row. We haven't seen that in a while. So the last time we saw that was December. And I would say by tomorrow, we're bouncing again on this S&P. Okay. And Mia says USA, Russia versus Europe about the war. Yes, that is adding, obviously, to a little bit of the mix here. And how long before he uses the word rinsed? Well, if we start bouncing, then we're not using the word rinsed. Or maybe we can say absolutely rinsed. But guys, I told you, I'm here to pump the market. Okay, I want the deep V recovery here. And let's see. Tony says he's out of cash. Okay, well, Tony, hang in there, bro. Hopefully we get a tiny little bounce here. And then we can start doing a couple of things. Now, NVIDIA earnings tomorrow. And quite interesting, we're seeing the market dump into NVIDIA earnings, which is something I kind of like to see because that often gives us a long opportunity. And we saw Alibaba, ByteDance, and Tencent are boosting orders for NVIDIA's H20 chip. So there's news coming in here that these guys are trying to get some of these chips going for, the more affordable AI setups that they do have there in China. So that could be increasing some demand for NVIDIA. So I don't want to take my eyes off this thing, but I think, it's fair to get a little bit excited when you see red candles leading into earnings. So let's see where this thing closes today. But I think if this thing dumps today, come earnings tomorrow, after market, I think they're coming out after market, but come earnings, I think there's going to be a buy there. If this dumps enough, you're going to get some kind of pump out of NVIDIA. I think they're going to surprise with some earnings and things like that. So something to watch there, guys. And NVIDIA, in terms of some levels that you can look at now, well, you can see we're sitting on that 200-day MA. That's 126 that you can watch. And then lower down, we've got 114. But yeah, for me, if you're speculating any red leading into those earnings, for me, it could be a nice bounce opportunity there. Short-term play for you guys. Now, Rob, just come join. Okay, come to Chart Hackers. Rob, all you need to do, go to the description here under the show, click on more, and there's Chart Hackers. Come hang out with us. We've got the full team for you. Okay, we got guys trading the Asia session. Okay, they're shorting, they're longing short-term time frames. We've got spot trading happening now. We're launching a spot trading. What are we going to call that thing, James? It's going to be a spot trading. What are we going to call it? And not a challenge. It's going to be a spot trading. What are we calling
it? A range trading challenge, right? I forget exactly how FJ was naming it, but yeah, it's for range trading in spot. And yeah. Okay. I forget, he called it something 20x or something like that. I don't know. Something like that.
Okay. So we've got something coming in there for the guys that want to trade spot. And Chaos is going to run that from an indicator perspective, like easy stuff. You just buy some spot or you sell some spot and you wait for your entries. We've got that. So we got the DGen stuff. We got that. And we obviously got all my charts and all those things going on in Chart Hacker. So just go into the show description there and come and join us. Come see what it's about. And you'll be well taken care of. Okay, let's go into some of these levels. Now, I spoke about a CME gap earlier there. For those of you that don't know what this is, well, basically what you can do is you can track the CME chart. Now, this chart closes late on a Friday and opens again on a Monday. So you'll occasionally get gaps on the chart. So for example, you can see a CME gap over there, and another example here, you can see a CME gap here at the 93K region. Now, what does this mean? Who cares about a gap? Well, what tends to happen most of the time, and I'm talking 8 or 9 times out of 10, these gaps get filled, whether you like it or not. So if you go back and back test the chart, wherever you've seen a gap, you're going to note that these gaps get filled and then the market moves sometimes the other way. Okay, so in terms of these gaps, they are nice for traders because they give us targets to look at in terms of BTC. So looking at that, you can track these gaps on that CME chart. You can see there's even one at 67K that hasn't been dealt with just yet. And we can track that on various timeframes. But in terms of Bitcoin on the weekly, you can see things are looking pretty dark and pretty disgusting at the moment. So you can see what's happened. We've lost our major weekly low. This was a major band for us, this 90K region on the weekly. You can see that was a major support band, and you don't need to be an experienced trader or chartist to understand that that's support and that's resistance. And now we've lost major weekly support. So what does this mean for us? It tells me that if this candle closes under this region, if this weekly candle closes below this 90K region, that could be pretty bearish for the market as a whole. Now, this is only Tuesday. The week ends on Sunday, so there's a lot of time for this candle to do various things. But in terms of what we're looking at now, quite early in the week, if we get a close underneath this 90K region, things could be pretty sad there. We might get a short-term pump back in, but then we're going to start looking at much lower levels there on BTC. And now it could take a little bit of time to play out. It might not happen in a day. It might take a month for these levels to get played out. And remember, we'll have tons of bounces and things like that in between as well. And make money, travel, enjoy, just making it worse for everybody there, saying a bear moon is coming in hot as well. That's the bad news. In case you guys are wondering what the bad news is, it's also a bear moon, okay, just to make things even worse for you guys. So in terms of where BTC can go, keeping it super simple here, you can see on the weekly chart, we've got a couple of big zones. So the first one is 81,000. That is our 200-day moving average. So you can see that is a big level for me. And then in terms of closing a CME gap, look at this. Everything from 81K down to 77,300 is a CME gap. So it would make a lot of sense if they come and close that gap, that we do bounce in that type of region, maybe a short-term bounce there. And then ultimately, guys, we've got to face the reality here. This is it. Okay, this is a major horizontal level for us. Anything from 72K down to even 69K, that is a big weekly level. That's a massive horizontal there. And if we do ever go down into those types of levels, I do expect the bulls to step in. I do expect a massive bounce out of BTC in those levels. But that's it. Okay, that's the reality of what we are faced with at the moment. So what we're going to do is we'll track this every day. So I'm not going anywhere. I'm here on Banter Plus every single day, and I'll be here. We'll guide you through this, whether it's the shit's falling over or the stuff pumping. I'm going to be here, and I'm going to give you strategies and ideas and things all day long. Okay, so don't panic about that. DJN says 69. I'm not happy with that 69K. Look, it's a filthy number. Okay, it's going to be dark and deadly, but guys, we'll do this journey together. Okay, if there's bounces along the way, we're going to trade them. If there's shorts on offer along the way, we're going to take them. Okay, CJ's got his long limit at 22K. Not bad. Okay, quite aggressive. Okay, you might get lower, bro. Why are you front running it so high? Maybe go like 15. Maybe keep it a little bit lower there just in case. Okay, now let's talk about altcoin season that never happened. Now, make money, travel, enjoy. I could just sit here and read the comments. Accidentally increased leverage to 150x instead of 15. That can get awkward. Okay, that can get a little bit awkward sometimes. Miles says it's almost Bitcoin season. Now, do you guys remember this chart? We used this as a guide not too long ago when everyone was screaming altcoin season, and it looked like it lasted approximately 3 days when it got over that level, and then everyone just got rinsed. Okay, so they flipped this thing back over. Now we're pushing the Bitcoin season number, and previously we could see this can last a month or two. Let's see how deep this can go. But right now it is not altcoin season, so we're not allowed to scream altcoin season apparently until this thing goes above 75. So when it does that, then we can get excited again. Now let's look at a couple of markers here, a couple of important things for the markers, for the market that we all need to pay attention to. And sometimes we don't look at this for a couple of days, but it's important to pay attention. USDT dominance. What is this? This is USDT, and this is the market moving into USDT or out of USDT. So when USDT dominance is pumping, that's obviously super bullish for USDT, but that's super bearish for Bitcoin. It's super bearish for the alts market as well. So you can see where USDT dominance looking super bullish here at the moment. This is the weekly. It's broken the 200-day moving average. This is not a good look for us. So if we're going to close above that 200-day MA, we most likely going to grind, and that's going to result in some kind of weakness in the market as a whole, and a push up to those types of levels is most likely going to see Bitcoin at low 80s. It's most likely going to see these altcoins at much lower levels as well. So Carlos says it's USDT season. I concur. I mean, it's pumping a super bullish USDT at the moment, and blood season, that's also a fair shout as well. But in terms of this, guys, if we get this weekly close above that 200-day MA, you most likely pushing to 5.6%, give or take, and that is going to be pain in the markets as a whole. So we've seen the Bitcoin weekly chart. We can see there's potential downside. We've seen the USDT dominance chart that is telling us there's potential upside on that dominance chart, which is not necessarily a good thing. Now, let's look at this. Why are my altcoins bouncing? You're asking yourself, the market looks so shit. Why did my altcoins hold for 2 or 3 hours? Well, this is exactly why they held for 2 or 3 hours. We had a beautiful rejection on dominance. Now, this comes to save the day more often than not. That's why I always emphasize, watch this dominance chart. When Bitcoin starts dropping and printing new lows, and your alts are holding levels or printing higher lows, and dominance is dropping like that, that often precedes some kind of mini altcoin pump. So we've probably seen some of these alts start moving a little bit now. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, but we might have seen some of these alts start popping off just a touch. So that is obviously a good sign for us at the moment. In terms of what can happen next for dominance, well, you can see this is a big support zone. So, to be fair, we would expect some kind of dominance bounce in this region. If it does bounce in that region, let's hope that is tied in with a monster Bitcoin pump. And then we don't mind if dominance is pumping. The problem comes, remember, when Bitcoin is dumping or flat and dominance starts pumping, that is going to be a problem. Okay, so Joe longing Solana. I'm also long Solana as well. I think it bounced fairly nicely off its zone. So hopefully we're going to get a little bit more out of it. I'm going to show you guys how to deal with that. Okay, so keep your eyes on this chart, guys. Now we're going to track through some of these altcoins, and we're going to understand what is going on in the market. So another reason why you are seeing a bounce in the altcoin market at the moment is our total 3 chart. What did it do? It dropped into major weekly support. It dropped into the 200-day moving average. What does that tell me? Well, when we drop into these types of zones, these types of big zones, we typically get a reaction and we get a bounce. So, no coincidence that it is bouncing now off that region. And you can see in terms of this chart, not feeling super bullish. So if we get a short-term bounce on these altcoins, for me, that's TP zone. For me, that's exit plan. Anything around this 850 billion region makes sense to me to start clipping some profits on any of these alts that we are sitting in longs in. Okay, so just look out in those types of levels or those types of areas. That is where you're going to be careful. 850 is your problem zone. Okay, let's go. Let's go. This is ETH. Okay, so we're looking at liquidation levels on ETH here, and I just thought it's important for us to note what is going on. A lot of the liquidity on ETH is now sitting to the upside, so this tells us a lot of the bulls have been wiped out. You're going to find this across the board on a lot of these alts, and the easiest path or the path of least resistance or the most fun for the market makers is going to be to send it up. So in terms of ETH, if ETH gets pumped up to even say 2,700, there's going to be something like $1.8 billion worth of liquidations to the upside. So things are definitely looking a little bit more interesting for ETH traders here in terms of what is happening. So I've just broken this down into the 5-day chart for you guys, and you can see anybody trading ETH now, we are bouncing off our high confluence zone. This was the zone that I've been talking about for the last couple of weeks. This is our 2,400 region that we are watching, and you can see at the moment we've dropped into to 2.4, and we're looking for a short-term bounce on ETH. Now, we don't have to be super bullish because we know, if you've been watching the show for the last while, you can see the last time we had green bullish prints on our 5-day chart, we had 60 days of chop, we had 80 days of chop, and we might be faced with another, say, 30 days of chop on ETH. So we don't have to get too ahead of ourselves, but what we can see is short-term bounce on the cards. And, where does this end for us? For me, it's the range high, 2.8 to 2.9, so no changes there. And then in terms of support, 2,100. That's all you need to know. Upside, downside, those are the big numbers, especially for the spot traders. Most of it in between is just going to be a lot of noise. But if you are long ETH now, your support is going to be your wick low, and your target is probably going to be that 2.8 region before you get some kind of big rejection. So that would be ideal. Okay, it's not a major push either. It's just a couple of percent here on ETH. Let's just see what that is. It's 10%, give or take. Sounds reasonable for a bit of a squeeze there to the upside. Matty, bro, I'm wearing my deep V recovery because I'm trying to really just will this market up for you guys. And I would say short-term bottom till say 91, 92 for Bitcoin, then we might be in trouble. Then a little bit higher, another rejection zone. So I don't know. I don't want to call a bottom just yet. If we do get a weekly close back above 90K, then we can say, okay, it was a deviation and the game is back on. Okay, so let's see where this weekly candle closes. If that weekly finishes above 90K, then we might have to change our approach to how we are going to do things. Okay, let's go. What's next? So Ali charts, we know we've had a total abuse here on Sol. I'm going to show you this chart. If you guys have just woken up and you're looking at the Sol chart, fuck me, you're going to think, wow, this is not good. But I think Sol is going to have a bounce. So Ali says 135 whales holding 10,000 Sol have sold or redistributed their holdings over the past month. That is not good. And this is a very important picture of Sol in Q4 2024 and in Q1 2025. So this is exactly, the shine is off at the moment, and the interest has waned. But in terms of liquidation levels and things like that, I'm looking at all the exchanges here on Sol, and the fun appears to be back to the upside. Look at that. If we take it to 149, we've got about $300 million worth of liquidations there. If we take it to 155, easy pickings for the market makers. So to me, it's starting to make sense that Sol is going to get some kind of bounce. And in terms of Sol versus ETH, we've been tracking this and we've been saying Sol versus ETH, it's time for a bounce off this weekly support level. So you can see they're not letting us down. We're getting a short-term bounce now on Sol versus ETH. Let's see if that's going to translate into Solana. But in terms of Sol levels, this is disgustingly bearish at the moment. Okay, so all this tells me is Sol was overcooked. Okay, and we had a monster sell-off. Now what has happened is we've lost major levels, we've lost major trends. So look what we've lost for Sol. Okay, longing the shit out of this thing at 180, was loving that level. What happened? We lost the 200-day MA, we lost the rising trend. Okay, look what's happened here with Sol. We've dumped below, we've retested, and they've rocketed us down. Now, remember, if you were looking for longs in these types of setups, look at that. It's a breakout, retest, and absolute send there on Sol. So in terms of this chart, Sol's actually looking filthy bearish at the moment. And how do we deal with that? So in terms of levels, I would say, I don't want to say it's not done, because we can see it's pretty obvious here for Sol. There's a couple of wicks that are not dealt with. So my main level was always going to be this 120 zone. That is always going to be a level of interest for us. Then you can see we've got these wicks to the downside at 110. So we know these levels are there. In terms of what this is doing now, based on the fact that it's bouncing here, for me, this really smells like a short-term bounce. It smells like something where you need to take profits rather than try and hang on too long. So in terms of what we're watching, 132 is now your 132.5 is now your support for Sol for today. Now this is a horrible wick to the downside, so you might very well see something like this, a push up on Sol, then a little grind down, and then back to test these lows, or alternatively, even worse, we might be seeing something like that. So in terms of Sol, let's not get euphoric. Let's look at resistance zones. 147, 148, that is your danger zone. Then another danger zone for you, 160. That looks like trouble up there for me as well. That was major support for us, and now most likely going to be tested as major resistance. So I would look for rejections there at 160. Be super cautious up there. If you start opening fresh longs, that's a danger zone. Okay, so support for now, 132. You can see we've had a nice bounce off this region danger 160. That's a possible short zone as well in that area. So you can look for something like that. At the time, you're going to look for overcooked 1 hour oscillators. You're going to look for those types of things, and we're going to see how it reacts in that area. But this is more than likely going to be an area where you get a rejection on Sol if it does pump in there. Roger says, when everyone is fear, I know we're going up from here. Yes, so we're pretty close to that fear and greed, okay? But what I want to say is, let's not get ahead of ourselves, okay? Let's not suddenly decide that's the bottom, bull market is back on, okay? That's not smart. So what we're going to do is we're just going to look for these reaction zones to the upside. We're going to take profits. We're going to look for head shorts, guys. Head shorts save the day more often than not when the market falls over, okay? So Sol, you've got your levels. Big one for me, 120 still and 110. Other than that, any pumps, looking for a rejection either at 147 or 160. That is the danger zone there. For me, I am running a Sol position here on L-Bank at the moment, looking for, obviously, looking for these targets to come into play. Not going to be married to this position. Let's just see if we can grind this thing a little bit higher to the upside. But yeah, in terms of Sol, reaction off a zone makes sense as a possible bouncer. Now, what we did see was, what was that comment there? I just, every time I see the bounce now, I cut it off. I get excited. What is that? I should have bought gold. Yeah, I mean, gold's been one of the best performers. It's been a better performer than, say, Popcat over the last few weeks. But let's talk Sonic. So this has been in the news. There's tons of requests from you guys all the time in the comments about Sonic. And we looked at this thing. It's shown extreme strength over the last couple of days. And I was looking at it today relative to some of the others, and it wasn't bouncing back as hard or wasn't recovering as hard. So when we open this chart now, this might actually surprise us and be cooking. But I wanted to look at a couple of options here on the Sonic. So yeah, you can see, okay, not so exciting at the moment. But in terms of Sonic and my thoughts around this now, we have lost a major daily level. We know we had a major daily level at 75. We knew that that was a big zone for us. We have now lost that and retested it. Look at this. On Sonic, we've lost that major daily level, lost the level, retested as resistance, and now we are in danger of a rejection to the downside. So what do we do for Sonic now, knowing that this thing has outperformed a lot of the other alts over the last couple of days? I think we just need to be a little bit cautious with this thing. So in terms of where I think it can go to the downside, let's just look at a couple of levels here, and then we'll start planning what we can do on the upside. But in terms of downside, I would say you can see we're dancing on this VWAP here at the moment, but I would say reasonable area for me is going to be about 63, 64. That looks like a reasonable zone there for a bounce. If that doesn't hold, guys, it's pretty obvious what's going on here at 57. You can see there's a lot of action in that zone. So we've got trend here. We've got some horizontals in play. We've also got a 618. So one of these looks like the more of a bottom zone for me on the Sonic. That looks, those look better for me in terms of, you know, where this is at the moment. With regards to shorter time frame things, well, you can see this is now pushing into a major daily level, and we need to respect these daily levels. We know, you know, they offer big resistance and big support. So if you are looking for something here, I don't think the risk reward is that great. I think it's about 9% there. So just be careful in terms of how you want to play that. But ideally, you want to break through this level, and then you want to see support around 74, 75. If you get that support around 74, 75, then I'd say, okay, have a go and just jump out at 80. That looks like a rejection zone there for you guys. So just be careful with this thing. You know, it's not looking as bullish as some of the others now on that recovery, but those are your levels. So 80, it could also offer you a nice short opportunity as well in that type of region there. So 80 to 82, just look for that pump into the old range, and then that rejection that could be a little bit bearish there for Sonic, and then you'll probably be looking lower down 65. That's one of the areas in that 57. Okay, remember, all these charts go straight into Chart Hackers directly after the show, so you can look at them at your leisure. Let's go. What else we got? HBAR. I thought this was a good one to talk about. Now, we know the American project. We know the Americans like it. It had some fundamentals not too long ago. Eleanor Terrett says, there's the 19B4 HBAR filing from Canary Funds. Okay, so stuff's going down for HBAR. The market got pretty excited the other day, and Coinbase derivatives filing for HBAR is eye-opening, says Tokenizer. while HBAR has broken its way into the top 16, it's surprising to see Coinbase file for derivative contracts already. So things are super interesting there. They're obviously identifying demand here, Coinbase, and they want some HBAR. Now, it is an American token, so it makes sense that they are going for American things. So I thought, let's look at HBAR as objectively as possible, considering the current market conditions and considering where we are. And let's just try and make some rational calls here on this thing. So in terms of HBAR on the weekly, you can see what's happened here. We've dropped into a macro 618 and a major weekly level. So we can see that is a typical bounce zone. So in terms of short-term bounces, 178 makes sense. You can see it's reacting off this region now. In terms of where it goes, it's going to be difficult to call. We'll look at a degen play. But if weakness continues in the market, so basically it's going to be the sum of weekly candle on BTC closing below that 90K, starting to drift lower. Then you're going to start seeing things like HBAR closing below 178, starting to drift lower. Then you're going to start looking at a couple of levels to the downside. So in terms of Bitcoin's playbook, if it turns bearish over the next week, I would say there's a very good probability that you're going to pick up HBAR at 139. There's a very good probability that you're going to pick it up at 118, potentially there to the downside. So any super high leverage traders, I would be cautious. But in terms of people that are bullish overall with the market, they're bullish on American tokens and things like that. They're bullish on HBAR applying for derivatives trading and things like that. It makes sense that this could be something you want to DCA on. Now, we can't tell the future. I can't tell you if Bitcoin's weekly is suddenly going to close above 90K and the market's going to turn super bullish and it's going to be a deviation. But what I can do is say, if this makes sense to you, you know, in terms of HBAR and the fundamentals behind it, well, maybe that's a DCA zone. Okay, so 178, what is DCA? It's basically averaging in your cost. So what I'm saying here is, you know, if you like this thing as an investment, what you're going to be looking at is 178 as a buy zone. Then you're going to be looking at 139. If it drops lower, you're going to average in your price. Then you're going to look at 118 if it drops lower there, and you're going to lower your average entry price. Okay, so that can be your strategy there on HBAR if those fundamentals make sense to you. Now, if you are a degen trader, slightly different game plan. Okay, you obviously can't let the price bleed out for you, you know, to those types of levels. So you could tackle this slightly differently. So in terms of what I'm looking at here, this is HBAR on the 2 hour, and I've banged out a bit of a degen setup for you guys. So what this could be is a potential invitation to lower levels, and this could be a nice hedge play for you guys. So in terms of HBAR, this is our 2 hour descending trend. You can see this thing's in a downtrend. Something else to take note of, look at our VWAP. This VWAP acts as resistance every time we go there. Okay, look at that. And what this is telling me is, if we get a short-term pump in the market, this could be a potential short area for you on HBAR. So look out from 22 down to about, say, 214, looks like a potential reaction zone. So you can see why that makes sense to me. That's a danger zone there for HBAR. That could be, for example, a ticket that sends HBAR to these lower levels. And then we go back here and we'll start looking at these things. The 200-day MA, we'll look at these horizontals lower down and things like that. So there's a possible degen short opportunity there for you guys on any short-term pumps here on HBAR. And in terms of that move, it's probably 14-15%. So just be aware of your level of euphoria on that day. When HBAR is now pumped 15%, maybe you long HBAR and something like that, and you've had a 15% pump and you're on 10x leverage and you're flashing your P&Ls everywhere. Just be aware of your euphoria when we hit a big resistance zone like that at 215 and at 22. That is most likely a short zone or a TP zone there for you guys. So look out for that. I'm going to drop this chart in Chart Hackers for you guys, and that is going to be your rejection play. And we keep it simple. You can see descending trend in play, VWAP in play, 382 horizontals makes sense. That's a potential rejection zone. Obviously, on the time or on the day, we need to see what's happening when it pumps into that zone. You need to look for your reactions on your oscillator. Typically, you want to see your divergence prints. You want to see these reversals getting shown here for you, and you want to see this downside come into play. Okay, so that's typically what you're going to be watching. But right now, that's the setup I'm seeing in terms of longs. Well, if the market rips from here, your risk is 6%. So just understand that if you want to be long. And your upside, max upside, absolute max upside for me, 21522. But you might find that if there's a short-term bump in the market here, you could be rejecting at 195. So be super careful there. Remember your risk now, if you're jumping in, it's about 6% to the upside. And Bree says bear market nowhere near. That's when tokens are for nothing. Oof. So how long do we have to wait, bro? How long are you going to make us wait? Because I remember, what did Link hit? Didn't Link hit like $8 or something? Or $5 or something crazy? I mean, I don't want to go back to those days. That was a rough ride. Okay, let's talk 𝗚𝗦 quickly here for you guys. So this was something I earmarked earlier today. And in terms of 𝗚𝗦 on the weekly, you can see the big level for us is 180, and that is unchanged. So in terms of a big reaction zone, 180 is still making sense to me at some point. So whether we visit it right now, as in today, or whether they bounce us up first and come back, I do believe that 180 is going to be inevitable here for 𝗚𝗦. So we need to watch that one carefully. But in terms of what I did today, there was a trade opportunity that I dropped in hackers one of them was PopCat, but the other one was 𝗚𝗦 here today. And this is what I was looking at. So this trade is still particularly or technically it's still on in terms of what can happen here. So if you are interested in a market bounce, and if Bitcoin looks okay and they do start holding and Bitcoin pumps to that 91K zone, then I expect some of these alts just to start bouncing off these types of levels. So in terms of 𝗚𝗦, you can see I'm just typically looking for some kind of activity in this region and then some kind of trend break and pump from the zone. So there is potentially a short-term move on 𝗚𝗦 here up to about, say, 12% and 16% potentially on the table here if this starts getting legs. And in terms of support, there's two ways you can play this. So firstly, we are using the wick lows. So we're saying this thing is double bottomed and we've now filled this wick and we are looking for a bounce to the upside. So first line of support, 190, you can use that. But then with the information at hand, zooming out, knowing that 180 is just around the corner and it is in fact a weekly level there where we should get some kind of hard reaction, you can look at this thing and say, okay, I'm going to wait this out. I want to wait for this thing to ping this 180 zone and then look for some kind of action there in that area. But the odds are, what you're going to wait for then is another 8% drop in the market. That could give you your 180 zone, but there is a chance then that this thing pops up before it comes back down. Okay, so just remember what you're dealing with there. Major weekly at 180, just under 180, and then your current wick low level that you can play with now, 194, 195, those types of areas, and then your targets, 220, 227, those types of things. Okay, so just play safe. Remember, we're not in the stage here where we're just aping. Okay, we're not aping massive size. We're being conservative here, especially with size, especially the guys that are using very high leverage. Just be aware of your position sizing. So I've dialed down my sizing drastically here. We just want to get some momentum going. We want to see how the market is moving, and then we can start adjusting things. But right now, for me, my strategy, keeping it calm. Don't want to get like unnecessarily rinsed out here for no reason. So just playing safe. And when the time is right, we will ramp it up again. So don't force things. You don't need massive size here in these types of conditions. And Syed says, bullhorn is much needed. I concur. Let's go. Come on, give us a little pump, just a tiny little pump here out of the market. Okay, let's talk DCA. Now, I'm sure a lot of you guys opened up your charts this morning, especially the Americans, when you woke up and Bitcoin was at 80 fucking whatever, 80 hell, and your altcoins are taking a lot of strain. So I thought, let's look at a couple of favorite alts for you guys. And I mean, maybe it's not a favorite anymore, but the first one on the list here is 𝗚𝗦. And how long did we wait for this to fall into our zone? We are finally there in our DCA zone. So in terms of DCA, 𝗚𝗦 hit the 750 zone, which we've been looking at. You can see this is a massive weekly level for us there. So in terms of DCA buying and things like that, that makes sense to me. Okay, because at some point when these alts hit these types of levels, at some point over the course of the next week or three, or maybe a little bit longer, but at some point they wake up and you're going to get a 78% bump out of this thing, or you're going to get a 100% move out of this thing at some point. And we're going to look at this and say, well, it's just a little trade. into the trend. Okay, you can see this descending wedge here. So at some point, that move is going to play out for us. So it might be off 6.1, but it might be off the 7.3 that it's sitting on right now. Okay, so PMG George, he's got the recipe there sorted, apparently. Okay, so guys, in terms of this is your zone, DCA zone all day long. Spot traders, things like that. Look, let's not get that euphoric. Let's go 10 or let's call it 11 as a target. And let's call it 13.4 as an upside target. But in terms of buy zones, 7.5 or 6.1 makes sense to me. I've got a frog in my throat, excuse me. Okay, next DCA play, Render. Okay, we looked at this one yesterday. I had to wear that stop on Render yesterday. They dropped us and dipped us below my entry. But this has now taken us back into a macro region here on Render. So I just want to highlight a DCA zone again for you guys. Anybody looking at Render, remember this thing, when the narrative moves back and when these alts start pumping again, everyone's going to start looking at Render again. They're going to look at Injective. They're going to jump back into all of these things. And, you know, Render, just don't take it off your radar. So for me, anything Render from 3.4 down to this 2.95 region makes sense. DCA zone here, guys, that's a massive level there for Render. If there is more weakness in the market, and I'm talking Bitcoin then losing levels, closing CME gaps, you're probably going to see Render here at about 2. So just mark these levels on your charts. They will be in Chart Hackers for you after the show, but mark these levels. These are great DCA zones that you can pay attention to, and you can look to accumulate. Remember, if you have a long-term mindset, at some point, these things should get a bounce. And, you know, again, it doesn't have to be a massive bounce, but there's 78% potentially just to the 50-day moving average. And if you get a bit lower, it could be 100% to that 50-day MA. At some point, they always come back to those MAs. At some point, they are going to visit the moving averages. So it's just a matter of time. You got to let that thing play out for you. Another one, guys, is Link. And yeah, I know there's a lot of guys that are always asking about Link. And in terms of levels, it hit the level we wanted yesterday. So 14.7, it's actually wicked a little bit lower. So DCA level 1 for you, Link. 14.7, and then a little bit lower down, guys, 12 is going to be your next banger zone there for Link. What does that mean for us in terms of a dip if it goes lower? Well, that's going to be roughly 15% from here, and that's I mean, what does that translate to in BTC? Probably about a 5% dip, I would say, on BTC. Let's just see what that looks like, just theoretically. Yeah, just above that to the 200-day moving average. So that's quite interesting there in terms of that one. So Link, guys, 14.7 DCA zone, 12.2 DCA zone. These are solid weekly areas where I expect some kind of bounce out of these things. Okay, and Maruk's in the house. He says dominance is now below the daily pivot. Okay, so that's pretty bullish then for the altcoins. Let's go Ondo. Also, Ondo took a stop on Ondo. We lost the 200-day moving average, and this thing capitulated. But what has it given us now? It's given us the full wick fill. We've seen that on a couple of other tokens. So in terms of where to from here for Ondo, well, there's two things you need to watch. So I would suspect if there is going to be further weakness on Ondo, I think there's going to be a pump first. Okay, so for me, that would look something along those lines, maybe 1.05 or maybe 1.13, something like that before there is more weakness. And then we'll probably find a situation where we dip into this 0.85. But the 0.85 big zone for me, look at that. We've got some wicks down here just below as well. So 0.85 to 0.82, nice little area there for Ondo in terms of DCA. Remember, massive RWA play. If you're getting it cheap, that's great. Okay, just remember BlackRock behind this thing, and it's a narrative play. When it kicks in, it's going to kick in. Okay, so 90 is your current support. Then DCA zone 85, and next DCA zone 81 is what you're going to be watching. So watch those areas there. That for me is a big bounce zone for Ondo. Obviously, we can always go lower. Okay, we can never say never in crypto. If you take a look at these candles here on Ondo, look at that. That candle alone on the weekly, 37%. So shit happens. Okay, things can happen here. But yeah, BlackRock, please come save our bags. But that is what we're looking at. Some nice levels there for Ondo. I really like the look of that. Very similar to the ETH type levels as well. Looking for a strong bounce there on that guy. Then Dupe, guys. Let's not forget about Dupe. So this is the bounce here or cut it off. I even said that on Twitter today. I said Dupe is in the bounce now or cut it off zone. Okay, and here's your bounce. This is a massive weekly region here for Dupe that you're going to be watching. So in terms of good areas here, 64, guys. That's a big level for Dupe. If Sol recovers and Dupe gets over the FUD with their whole involvement with what was that guy's name? Hayden something and the Libra and the Melania and all that drama, they should recover relatively quickly. Remember, when Sol picks up again, Dupe picks up, Radium picks up, all these Sol plays start picking up again. So in terms of the bounce here, I'll cut it off. I'd say that's a good result. I really did threaten to cut it off, so it listened to me. And I think so far today we've had a fair bounce on Dupe. We've had a 10%. Okay, quite nice. But that is your support. So until we close under that level, your next DCA zone is going to be 49. So in terms of where Dupe can go now, I would say keep it super simple here. Let's not get too aggressive. You're going to use your 64 as your support, and you're going to look at candle highs at 78, and you're going to look at that 50-day MA at 86. That for me was pretty much max here of what I would expect. And then I would say by then we're probably getting some kind of rejection there out of the market, and things are starting to roll over a little bit. Okay. And Sayed says it will probably perform like OM this cycle. Yeah, if they can manipulate it enough, I suspect they can. Then let's talk Injective, guys, another crowd favorite. Just want to give you your DCA zone. So we're in one now, in case anyone was wondering or you were panicking. 12 is actually a buy zone. 12.2 is a buy zone here for Injective. It makes sense for multiple reasons. It's a big level. It's also a macro 786. And then lower down, I've got a really nice area as well. This guy at 9.5. These are big zones here for Injective. So if you believe in Injective fundamentally and there's no funny business there, well, I would say 12.2 DCA, 9.5 DCA. These are great zones here for these types of tokens. And, in 3 or 4 months' time, when everything's ripping again or the market's pumping, you'll probably be quite happy. You got it at those levels. So, look, a lot can happen between now and then, and we can also see lower things. But if we get there, I will deal with it with you guys. But if anybody is unsure, as to where do we look at these alts, what do we do now? Well, just zoom out, go to the weeklies and say, okay, this is a potential bounce zone here, cool, and that's a potential bounce zone there. So with that information, those are nice DCA zones. Could get some kind of bounce there from those guys. Okay, let's go. 𝗬𝗢𝗟𝗟𝗢𝗦 also coming alive again. Now, I wanted to just tap on a couple of things here. And just, again, we just need to be careful with how we play this. We've got to be careful with how we handle things. So anybody long on some of these alts at the moment, I just want to highlight what's going on here. This is major support that you are watching, previous support. This now becomes resistance. So what have we seen in the past when we're looking at longing breakouts and things like that? What typically happens? We get a breakout to the upside, then we get some kind of rejection, and more often than not, we get some kind of dip back into our 382, maybe sometimes a little bit lower. So what I want to say here, looking at this 𝗬𝗢𝗟𝗟𝗢𝗦 chart, just be careful here, because you might see a situation like that start playing out on 𝗬𝗢𝗟𝗟𝗢𝗦. Let's flip this thing back round. Okay, and then you could get a situation where this, it gets you into a spot of trouble. Okay, so 𝗬𝗢𝗟𝗟𝗢𝗦 is bouncing. We can see that. Let's start looking at potential upside danger zones here for us. So in terms of 𝗬𝗢𝗟𝗟𝗢𝗦 2.96, look for a rejection here. Then a little bit higher up, we've got a VWAP at 3.08. Look at that. That VWAP in the way there probably give you some kind of rejection there as well. And then a little bit higher up from there, we've got our 618 and VWAP in play as well. So in terms of rejection zones for 𝗬𝗢𝗟𝗟𝗢𝗦, be careful up here. 3.08, 3.2, those are your big rejection zones there. I would be super cautious there if I were you, and that could be a nice potential short opportunity there. Again, if these things turn bullish again, you're most likely going to find a situation where they find support back in the range, and then we can start looking at breakouts and things like that. But until that happens, just be super careful here on these pumps, okay? Just look after yourselves. You can see now if you're jumping into longs at the moment, what is your risk? Always calculate how much you can lose if you're wrong, and your risk here is, if you're jumping in a long, 8%. So it's a little bit dangerous now, especially the high leverage stuff. And Tony says spot buys. Yes, Tony, that's why I'm giving you these big areas, okay? You can't get liquidated on spot. You just become a long-term investor if it doesn't go your way. And that is a way that you can sleep at night. Okay, so those of you that were feeling under pressure here, that could be something that can help you guys. Now, quick touch on meme coins here. Tyler D says overall meme coin market cap is now down to 56 billion, 80 billion wiped out since the December peak. We know the memes got rinsed. Okay, so let's see what's going on. And this was Popcat from earlier. I dropped this in Chart Hackers earlier today. You can follow what goes on in Chart Hackers. Yeah, there's let's just see where the trading setup is. I didn't drop much today. I wasn't super comfortable with where we were in the market, but yeah, here's this Popcat trade that we were looking at earlier today. Here it is. I dropped it there this morning. morning saying we're looking for this bounce here on PopCat. Nice little push up, okay, straight into the target there and into a rejection zone. So, in terms of PopCat, can it go higher? Yes, of course, but it's been one of the better performers today. You can see right now it is at resistance, and I am out of this trade. So I'm done here on PopCat, but if it starts popping through this area, your next target for PopCat, 26, is what you're going to be looking at. So 26 is another, say, 10 or 12% there on PopCat to the upside. But just be careful. If you are long here, understand your risk. Okay, your risk is all the way back to the bottom, 18% to the downside. So be super careful there, PopCat. And I would expect some kind of short opportunity there for you at 26 to 27.3, somewhere in that region. I would expect a rejection. So just be careful up there, okay? That's a potential short zone there for you guys on PopCat. Let's talk things like Brett. Same story. This was a setup I mapped out. We did an emergency Zoom on Chart Hackers this morning, and obviously the market was falling over. So the guys needed to know, a couple of things. But here's Brett churning higher. These are your levels. So Brett support, you can see your big support, 367. Then in terms of where do you exit, where's a danger for Brett? 414, that's a possible exit zone, and 446 is a possible exit or short zone there on Brett. So you can see descending trend. If we pump into trend and horizontal, that's a danger zone. Let's be careful in that area. Let's not get too euphoric. If it does pop through, that's your next TP zone. Like, get out. Okay, 446, not, probably not an area you want to hang on much longer. One of these could offer that big rejection to the downside. Remember, when all of this is happening, you're going to tie it in with Bitcoin, looking for rejections at things like 91,300, 93,400, those types of areas there. So just play your alts accordingly. And remember, at all times, keep one eye on dominance. When dominance starts bouncing, be careful on your altcoins. Okay, one more for us. This is Ponky, and we looked at this yesterday. I'm still sitting in a Ponky long. Okay, I like the idea of this Ponky, and it was a low leverage play, but it's trying to do things at the moment. And in terms of support, you've got Quantum Reactor, you've got Rising Trend, and you've got horizontals. 1244, that's the support level that you're going to watch. 1244, look for the bounce. Okay, I'm looking for a bounce on Ponky, not trying to get too aggressive with this thing, and we'll keep it fairly simple. Look at that, our 382, and we've got some VWAP and horizontal action in the way as well at 157. So 157 is the absolute max there for me on Ponky. 157, look for an exit there. But support 1244 is what I'm using. Quantum Reactor, trend, horizontals in play, a little bit more bullish on the 4 hour at least, maybe a bounce. If the market rips and Sol starts ripping there for us, then we should be good. Okay, guys, there we go. So proven again that if you wear the right t-shirt, you can pump the market. Okay, deep fee recovery in play. And guys, let's just not get euphoric. I'm going to be taking profits on any pumps here. Okay, I might leave 1 or 2 open. Remember the rules. 1 or 2 you leave open in case the market keeps ripping. Those ones you add to in your size, you grow it. Option number 2, look for head shorts. Okay, if you want to stay long on everything, look for head shorts at resistance bands. Option number 3, take profit on your altcoins. Okay, simple like that. James, we didn't see much of you today.
No.
There he is. There he is. Okay, I'm sure he's happy his bags are pumping.
I'm waiting on that.
Okay, James, see you later. Thanks for hanging. Okay, guys, be safe out there. You've got the game plan. Okay, just be safe. Okay, I'm not trading big stuff here. Keeping it simple. We go big later when the market's aping again. Okay, see you later.